There's been very few periods where it's been this sustained for this period of time, and ultimately every one of those periods where it's been that sustained for that long, it led to a more corrective outcome in the market. So here's what you need to know before the bell this morning. I did a little bit of work over the weekend just kind of looking at markets and what's going on. We touched on this in the newsletter, of course, and then I've got an article coming out on Tuesday talking a little bit more about this. But if you take a look at the market right now, we've now been up 16 of 18 weeks. And again, this has been a very low volatility move. As we talked about last week, you've been in a very narrow defined channel in this market. We just trade to the top of this channel, come back down, retest the lower end of this channel, which is right along the 20-day moving average. And we're creating this ever bigger divergence from the 200-day moving average. So again, just a very low volatility move, up 16 of 18 weeks. The last time that happened was in 1970. So it's been a very long time since we've had such a slow volatility advance like we've had, such an extended one. And we're up 20% in those 18 weeks. So from the October lows, we're up 20%. Now remember, this run, of course, has built a lot of bullish exuberance in the markets. Everything is good, everything is positive. But remember that just in October, not too long ago, everybody was extremely negative. This decline had everybody convinced that the bear market had returned. We got into extremely negative territory in terms of sentiment, and that had followed that very big AI, this was an AI chase back in earlier last year. That AI chase into the peak in July, everybody was bullish just like they are now, because guess what? We're right back to that AI chase once again. But again, very two similar periods. We had periods where you had a very elevated and extended MACD buy signal. And again, that MACD level is very high. This is the point, though, that I want to bring out. Take a look real quick at how long that this MACD has been kind of flatlining at a very high level. I had to go back a good ways to see a period that's been very similar to that, and this is what we found. So again, you had this period of very high elevation that was sticky, and again, this is the thing, right? We've been to these periods where we've had very high levels of this MACD signal before, right? So, you've had these periods where markets got very exuberant, you eventually had the correction, but there's been very few periods where it was sustained at this very high level. We have to go back to look at periods like post-2008. So again, this is 2009, QE1, TARP, HAMP, HARP. We're just fueling the markets with just all kinds of goodness here. Very extended run, not much of a correction, and then we got into a fairly decent corrective cycle in the markets following that period. Going back prior to that, at not quite as high of a level, but getting there, was the run in the market, very low volatility, heading into the peak right before the financial crisis itself. Since then, we really haven't had periods that were sustained at a very high level. We've had spikes in volatility, spikes in the markets that eventually led to some type of corrective action, but there's been very few periods where it's been this sustained for this period of time. And ultimately, every one of those periods where it's been that sustained for that long, it led to a more corrective outcome in the market. So again, not saying that's absolutely got to occur, nothing to panic about, but something certainly worth considering when you're taking a look at where we are in terms of just this extended period of the markets being very overbought. You have a period of declining momentum in the market that's also a negative kind of for a sustained move. Momentum is starting to drag here a bit. So again, not saying that markets are going to crash, but again, expecting some type of corrective action to reverse some of this overbought condition certainly should be expected at some point between now and the election. So just making you aware of that. That's what you need to know before the bell this morning.